Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for So Chatty. Welcome to our episode number 31 on October the 22nd, 2021. Hope you had a good week. Well, we had an interesting week. Well, one day this week, we went to Whirls and Swirls, which is our local APQS long arm dealer here in our area. And we met up with Tracy Russell, who's the owner of that particular establishment, and this was our free course. When you buy a new long arm from APQS, they give you a free one-day course that basically goes over things like maintenance and little tips and tricks about maintaining your machine and getting the most out of it. Now, we had an awful lot of information crammed into the time that we were there. As I said, we were there at 10 o'clock in the morning. We left a little after 4. And we worked right through lunch as well. And Tracy is really, really good. She's a great instructor. She's a great dealer. And I took some video of this as well. And we're going to try to remember, and there was a lot to remember, the things that Tracy showed us and told us. And a lot of these things are things that aren't clearly outlined in the manual. So that's another good reason why, if your dealer offers you something like this, you should take them up on it. Tracy also suggests that we not do this until after we'd had Lucey and played with it for a few weeks. And I think now, in hindsight, that was a really good idea because what she told us made a lot more sense. Some of the things we'd already experienced, some of the things we knew, but you can always learn a lot more, and we did learn a lot more. So how we're going to do this today is I divided it up into sections the same way as Tracy did it, and I took some video clips, and after we've had our little discussion on each section, we're going to put the video clip up so you can see what we're talking about as well. So those of you that have a long arm machine, you may know a lot of this stuff already. A lot of the things that Tracy talked about are not necessarily specific to just our type of long arm. And I think some of them would apply to almost any machines because I think they all work basically the same. So the first thing is you might want to know is why do we go with an APQS as opposed to a Gamel or what's the other makes? Handy Quilter.
Handy Quilter. I think they're the three that are the most well known in our area.
Now there was one that we the other night came across just out of curiosity. We actually asked Alexa when the first long arms came on the market, and apparently they were developed by one man, and what was his name? Something with an N.
Yeah, now you're saying something with an N. You didn't write it down.
No, I didn't write it down. Yeah. Nick, no, I don't know, but somebody, and he was European, and back in the 70s, but back in the 70s, I think they were fairly crude. They were industrial level. They weren't really meant for home use, and most people wouldn't have been able to afford one for their home anyways at the time. And of course, in the 1970s, quilting was done in a very different way. I mean, we're talking pre-rotary cutter. Did you find it?
Hang on, I'm working on it.
We're working here on this. Should have probably written this down, but I didn't. So,
well, when you're talking about it, you think you would have written it down.
Well, I wasn't really going to talk about it, but it just came to my mind now. So anyways.
And wouldn't you know, I can't find it.
Now you can't find it.
It all talks about it, but it didn't tell you about the company.
Oh, wait, I can probably find it. Computer, who invented the first long arm quilting machine?
Sorry, I don't have an answer for that.
You're no help. Well, anyways. If we come across it at some point, we'll talk about it. What I'm trying to get across isn't so important about who invented it. It's just that these machines have been around a lot longer than what we thought they had been. But that was because they weren't as popular as they've gotten now today. So why did we buy an APQS? Well, one, because we had Tracy. Tracy's in the area. There are not a lot of APQS dealers in this area of Canada. There seems to be a few more to choose from out west. But also, as far as long arms are concerned, we don't really have, that we know of, too many other brands out here, do we, that are dealers?
No, well, there is Gamel dealer.
Yeah.
That's the one that's in
Kawartha.
Kawartha.
That's a few miles away from us, though.
And then the Quilt Store up north has Handy Quilter, but technically I don't think they're authorized. No, I'm not sure if they're not an authorized dealer. They're if you look up Handy Quilter, there's no representatives in Ontario. It points to their head office in the United States.
The problem with that is if you need help, if you need servicing or something like that, it might be very difficult to get someone to service your long arm who knows what they're doing. So that's why we went with Tracy. Plus, we have worked with Tracy before because you can rent her machines out, and she's just very, very helpful. Plus, she is a trained technician for APQS, so this woman can fix these machines as well. So anyways, that's why we bought an APQS, and that is not to say that Handy Quilter and Gamble are bad machines. It's just that we had one local.
The first long arm quilting machine was manufactured by the Knowlting company.
Knowlting, that's the name.
Knowlting company.
Okay.
So, and I've got a whole list of ones that actually make quilting machines. There's APQS, there's Baby Lock, there's Bernina, there's something called Eclipse, Gamble, the Grace Company, Handy Quilter, Husqvarna, Innova. Innova I have heard of as well because, but it's not, I don't think we can get them in Canada. Juki makes one. Martelli is listed. There's Knowlting and Pfaff.
There's quite a few.
There are quite a few that are listed. So
there you go. So I guess it really, if you're going to buy a long arm, though, my suggestion would be to look at who's close to you, or you can get one. Try all the different models out. We didn't really try all the different models out. We were used to the APQS machines because, as I said, we rented time on the ones in Tracy's.
And the fact that we had a support system out here.
Well, that's what I said earlier.
Yeah, was a big consideration.
But anyways, just to give you a feel for Tracy and Tracy's store, I'm going to insert in here a little video I took when we first got over there for our training course. So I am in Whirls and Swirls. Walter's here too. And we're here for our day of education about our Juicy Lucy. And this is Tracy. Tracy is the owner of Whirls and Swirls, and she is an APQS representative, technician, salesperson, the whole kibosh here. So we're with an expert, and today we're going to be taking through everything we need to know about our Juicy Lucy and then some. So periodically, I'll be taking little videos as we go along. Tracy says that's okay, and so we'll get started. Okay, so just show you the setup that's here. There's just Walter and I and Tracy in here at the moment, and this is Whirls and Swirls, and you can see there are 1, 2, 3, 4 long arm machines in here. This one's a Millie. That's the top of the line one. This is the Lenny. We're going to be working on the Lenny today because Lenny is very much the same as Lucy. And this is Lucy over here. And you can see this one has a quilt path on it, which maybe someday I will have one of those too. I don't know. And then this is the Millie 30. This is the big monster. And you can see it's got a quilt path, and these have special lights over at the top of it. This is the granddaddy of them all. And of course, wall of thread as well, and sample quilts up on the wall, and Walter, and pantographs. So everything you need for long arm quilting is here. So we're looking forward to this. We're going to learn a lot, I know for sure, and I'll be sharing some of this with you as we go along. So the very first thing that Tracy basically showed us was how to clean our machine. And it's not hard.
And it is listed in the manual.
It is listed in the manual, but it's important. And I know, well, ask me how I know. After I did my first quilt and I was starting on my second quilt, the machine was having difficulty picking up the bobbin thread. And I could not figure it out at all. In fact, I was pretty much swearing a blue streak. Walter came downstairs. I was being very vocal. And he looked at it too. And so I did pull the bobbin out, I did do a superficial cleaning because it didn't look dirty or anything like that. And I only did one quilt on it. So I'm thinking, well, this thing must be good for several quilts before you really need to do a serious cleaning. I was wrong. You need to. They're not a delicate machine, but just like your sewing machine. And I should have used the rule I use with my sewing machine. After every major project that I do, I thoroughly clean my sewing machine. And a lot of people don't do that. And you've heard us talk on here before about people who don't clean their machines and the problems they can have. So Walter went through the manual and he did exactly what they said to do. But Tracy showed us in a little bit more detail what you should do. And as I said, it's not hard, but it's very easy to get lazy, I think, and not do it. Just say, oh, it'll be fine for this quilt. So what do you have to do? Well, first thing
is you need to blow out the bobbin, or take the bobbin case out. The bobbin
case, yeah.
Yeah, out. And you have to blow, either using canned air or if you have a small compressor, blow out the bobbin area of it.
And that gets rid of lint and dust and thread pieces.
And also do the same thing to the bobbin case type of thing.
Yeah.
Or wipe it well out. There's some tricks about shoving, like there's some lint that get caught in the thread guide, so there's a way to clean that out.
With the business card, you put it underneath the edge of it. Actually, now that is, I didn't read that in the manual.
Yeah, it is.
Is it in the manual? Oh, okay.
Or no, wait. May not be in the manual. I saw it on their video online that did that. And they also talk about if you have a spring installed inside your bobbin case to take the spring out and clean it as well.
Yeah, and another thing we learned that's related to this is if you're using magnetic bobbins, you don't need the spring inside the bobbin case. That's there for if you wind bobbins yourself and they're not wound on a magnetic bobbin, kind of thing.
The purpose of the spring that's in the bobbin case is if it's as you're moving your machine around, and because it's a high speed machine and you're stitching in a high rate of stitches per minute, the bobbin starts spinning really fast.
Yeah.
And the spring helps it slow down when you stop or pause. So if you have a self-wound bobbin, they're metal and there's no magnetic part to it. So the spring helps slow that bobbin down. But if you're using a magnetic core bobbin, it sticks to the inside of your bobbin case, the magnetic part, and it helps slow it down in between stops. So
that is something that we had not done. So when we came home, first thing I did was, because we primarily right now are using magnetic bobbins, I pulled that little spring out. And it's not a big deal to pull it out. And it doesn't look like a spring. They call it a spring, but it's a piece of flat steel that's cut like in a C shape with some slots in it.
And it's pressed against the inside of your bobbin case. So it doesn't really look like a spring. It almost looks like one of those battery contacts or something.
Yeah.
That you have on when you put a battery in something. But it's not really clearly spelled out in the manual that when that spring should be inserted and when it isn't.
So I actually did 2 quilts with the spring in the bobbin using a magnetic bobbin. So it didn't seem to cause me any problems.
No, but that might have aggravated the fact that you couldn't pull up the bobbin.
Yeah, that might have been one of the problems with that. So anyways, now after you've blown all the crap out of it, and you might not see that much crap in there.
No.
But it's still a good way to blow it out. In fact, Walter just got a small compressor. I have canned air here, but canned air is quite expensive actually, and it doesn't last very long. So really, for what it would cost you for like about 6 cans of canned air, Walter picked up a small compact air compressor to use on this. Plus I think he wanted one.
I just thought that it would be more economical for him. Not only that, it is handy sometimes if you need to blow something out or something like that.
So after you've blown that out, then you take your bobbin case out. Well, you take your bobbin case out when you're blowing it all anyways. Then you give it something called, she called it a WD-40 bath.
Right.
And this is in the book. And essentially, and this is kind of messy, you get right in there where the bobbin goes, where the bobbin case is, and you blast it with WD-40. Now what that does is it gets rid of any other little pieces of crud that might have been sticking in there that the air did not get rid of. Now you lay down some paper towels under this. I actually devised a little thing with a tray that I put paper towels in that slides right under it. And I know this doesn't make any sense to you when I can't show it to you, but trust me. And you just squirt it with that, and then you take a good towel, like a lint-free towel, like a paper towel, but like one of those shop ones. Don't use the kitchen towels, kind of a thing that, you know, paper towels, because they'll all shred in there, and then you've just
Or
blown
if you
out
have
crap.
a decent lint-free rag.
Yeah, you can use that too, and you just sort of suck up any excess WD-40 that's in there, and you run the needle on manual for about 15 or 30 seconds
At
slow speed, and that just turns the hook around and gets all that stuff out of it. It even said in the book that you could give it a little blow of air again after you've done the WD-40, and that just gets any residue out. Then you oil it, and you don't need a lot.
because a lot of people think WD-40 is actually an oil, but it's not really an oil. So it's a type of a silicone spray or whatever.
Yeah.
And but you still need to oil.
Yeah, you still need to oil, and it's just sewing machine oil, the kind you get for your domestic machine. And there's a couple of areas, well, one area that you get into. It's a little awkward, so you need one of those oil bottles that has the long little plastic tubing that comes out of it. And you give it just a couple of drops of that, and it runs down in around the bottom of the hook. And then you run it again on manual, slow, so that the hook goes around and it spreads the oil out evenly. And if there's any excess, you just kind of sop it up with your shop towel again.
Yeah, and one thing I wanted to clarify though, for people that don't know have a long arm and don't know what a long arm is, or haven't never understood was it, in a regular sewing machine, the bobbin case is surrounded by all kinds of other things, right? So that, like, they tell you not to blow air into a regular sewing machine to clean it out because you might spread the dirt in other areas. But the bobbin in at least the APQS, it's self-contained. So the only thing you're affecting is the bobbin case. It's all metal all around it and everything, and there's no other mechanics nearby where you would be able to blow dust into it.
Yeah, so you're okay to do that. So don't do this cleaning method with your domestic
don't do
machine.
this on a domestic machine.
No.
It's and don't use WD-40 in a minute.
No, don't.
This is only for this particular brand of long arm as a recommendation.
Yeah.
I have no idea what other brands of long arm use for their cleaning methods, but this particular brand, APQS, is what they suggest.
Yeah. So after you've done all of that, then you've probably got a little gunk on your needle and your needle plate. Now the needle plate, now I haven't done this yet, and you don't need to do this every time you clean the machine, but there's 4 screws that hold down the needle plate, and you can take those screws out and clean underneath it with a soft cloth and the top of it, and check it for burrs. We found out that one of the reasons you might have problems with your thread, if your thread is shredding a lot or breaking a lot, is that you may have had a needle strike, just like on a domestic machine, on your needle plate. They're pretty heavy duty, but these needles are pretty heavy duty too, and they go very fast. And something else we learned about needles too, these needles flex, and they're supposed to. They're supposed to bend a little bit because they're multi-directional. So like when you're doing circles and things like that, the needle has to be able to bend. And that's why she told us never replace the needle with a titanium needle. They might be all right in your domestic machine. In fact, they are, because I use titanium needles in my domestic machine and in my embroidery machine, but not to use them in the long arm, because the long arm needles are designed to have flex to them, and titanium needles don't have any flex. So you can have some problems with that.
Yeah, and if you have a needle break or Or if it hits your bobbin case or something like that, it could cause damage to the machine because the titanium needles don't break as easily as a regular needle. So,
and if you get a needle strike on your plate for some reason, on the needle plate, it could leave a burr. So you examine the hole and kind of feel around with your finger, and if you feel any rough spots or that, you can polish them out with a piece of 320 emery cloth.
yeah, do we have any emery cloth?
I don't know.
I was in Home Depot. I was gonna take a look and I forgot.
I don't know. I'm sure workshop. You
Well, I'll
check.
take a look. I don't think I have an emery cloth. All I have is sandpaper, and you don't use sandpaper.
No, you don't use sandpaper. You use emery cloth. 320. She told us specifically 320 grit on that, and you can just kind of take a piece of that and roll it up and stick it through the hole and go back and forth with it, and that'll probably take out any little burrs that might be there that may have caused. So that's a preventative, well, not preventative, that is a way to fix things if you're getting a lot of thread breaks or your thread is shredding. There's other reasons why your thread might break and shred too, but that could be one of the reasons if you have that problem. So after you've done all of that, you should take your needle and run it through a piece of scrap fabric several times slowly, just to wipe up or take off at any excess oil that might have accumulated on the needle while you were doing all the cleaning, because you don't want that in your quilt, right? And of course, don't clean this thing when you've got a quilt on the machine, okay? You can blow the air out if you move it off to the side, she said, but you just don't want to splash oil onto your quilt, right?
Well, not only that, she told us, like in the manual, it says to do this WD-40 bath every time you clean it, and she suggested not to bother with that part of it. Just do the air blowing and the oiling, on a regular basis, and then once in a while.
Yeah, you don't have to do the WD bath every time with it. Now, on top of the machine, there are 4 or 5 little wicks that are sitting up there. Don't pull them out. Okay, it's the same as in your domestic machine. You have a wick in there too. It's an oil thing. And you take your finger and you touch each one separately. And after you've touched the first one, you look at your finger. If your finger comes up a little shiny, you don't need to oil that wick. But the wicks are independent from each other. So only oil the ones that are dry, and only 1 drop of oil, because she took the machine, she opened it up for us to show us the inside of where these wicks are. And if you over oil it, oil will drip down inside where the flywheel is and some other mechanisms. And it won't hurt the machine, but it can seep out and get on your quilt.
Yeah.
So if you do by chance over oil it, and you think there's this problem, then you can open up this panel and you can go in there with your shop towel and just suck up any of the excess that's in there. But 1 drop only, and only on a wick that's dry. So if your finger comes off it and there's no shiny glistening on your finger, then that means it needs oil. 1 drop. 1 drop. That's all you need. So that's like cleaning the bottom case, oiling, and the inner workings. And so, can you think of anything at that stage she told us about the inner workings?
I think it's pretty much covered it.
Yeah, I think so. So that's probably
90% of what you have to do.
Yeah, for it. So, you know, and this is not like a domestic machine in the sense that you got to keep your domestic machine clean and oiled as well.
Because actually most of the mechanical part of the sewing machine is not exposed enough for you to oil, to have to oil. No. So
anyways, I'm going to insert a little video clip showing you what she showed us about all of this. Okay, so we just learned how to do general cleaning and maintenance on our machine, and we learned some really good tips about all of this. And we'll talk more about that. Okay, so Tracy has opened up the machine. She's going to show us how the inner workings of this work. And
No, it's okay. I'll stand them all up and I'll take a picture from
yeah, this is going to be kind of interesting. I don't know if we'd ever have an opportunity to open this up. I'll have to ask her why we would want to open this up. I have a feeling this is something somebody that's experienced service person should be looking at. Okay, so this is the flywheel right here. And actually it looks fairly simplistic. So maybe it does get thread or something in there. You could open that up and clean out the thread. But we'll see what she tells us.
Attached to your flywheel and to your needle bar. So, and it's also attached to your take-up lever, which is on the other side, right? So as it spins, everything's moving all at once. So when I turn this on, so your wicks are up here. Oh, where'd Walter go? Oh, I couldn't see you. You were right, but you were directly behind him. So these 4 wicks here are lubricating those moving parts underneath there all the time. Now you don't need any more oil than what's in there. So when you're feeling these, you're gonna feel each one individually. If you've got even the slightest glisten on your fingers, don't put oil in there.
Okay.
Because it doesn't dissolve or dissipate or, and they can only hold so much. So what's gonna happen is if you keep putting oil on there, they're gonna get saturated too much and then the oil is gonna drip and it's gonna puddle down here. Eventually it will start just seeping out and it'll come down through your lights and it'll end up down onto here. So you can absolutely over oil those wicks. Absolutely.
Okay, that was the question I was going to ask, if you could over oil them.
Yes, you can. Yeah. So only 1 drop of oil and only on the wick that's dry because they're not connected to each other. So if the other ones are fine and you've got one that's dry, then just 1 drop on that wick. Okay? Is that cool in there?
Yeah. So would there ever become an occasion when we might have to open that up when we're doing our general maintenance?
I would say not, unless, and you already know better, but if you were to start seeing oil coming out, then and there's way too much in there, you might want to take that off to wipe it out. You've already got a flywheel cover on this side, so the chances of, say your thread breaks and you don't notice and it's flapping around up here on the take-up lever, on the very rare occasion, it can get sucked in that hole and get caught around here. He's giggling. But there's a cover, there's a flywheel cover on this side. So
Oh, okay.
it's very rare and hard for it to happen. But there have been times when thread can get wrapped around that flywheel on the inside and then the cover's got to come off and you just get the thread out. Yeah.
Okay, so you go to quilt to quilt, you turn on your machine and nothing happens. What could be the problem? Well, first thing, you check to make sure it's plugged in, and if you're plugged into a power bar or whatever, make sure that's turned on. But if it's still not coming on, then you
if you power switch and it doesn't power on,
yeah,
is one problem. And if it's plugged in and electricity is going to it, and you're not able to turn it on, then it could mean that the fuse at the power on switch has blown.
So she showed us how to open that up and put a new fuse in. In fact, it comes with a spare fuse right in the little holder. The little holder sits under the switch. You take a pair of scissors or something and you just pry open this little drawer. There's your fuses. You take the bad one out, you take the spare one that's sitting there, put it in and push it back in, and away you go. But what was the next thing? Okay, that's the power on switch.
That's the power on. But then there's another fuse that can go on. It's the same value of fuse. There's a fuse that protects the motor. And like if you get a needle jam or something like that, I guess it can cause this fuse to blow. So you actually have to take the back cover of the machine off. And it's the fuse that goes to your motor. And what that says is she says the machine comes on, but when you go to click and stitch with it, it doesn't
Nothing
stitch,
happens.
right? So so then that could be the motor fuse. So she showed us how to take the back cover off and find where the fuse is for the motor, and then you replace that fuse.
Now it takes you longer to take the back cover off because there's a lot of screws. It's not hard, but there's a lot of screws, and replacing the fuse, you can do that in seconds with it. The longest part is putting the cover on and taking the cover off and putting it back on.
I mean, you'd think that they might put it in a little bit better spot to replace the fuse, but I have a feeling that the fuse going is pretty rare.
Well, she said it. Yeah, she said that you don't really have to worry about that too often with it. So she did show us how to replace that, those two pieces as well. And we didn't pick up any extra fuses, although it did come with some extra fuses. So we're okay for now, but the next time we're in there, we'll probably pick them up. And she said too, she keeps them in stock. She said they're not always that easy to find, like in a Home Depot or something like that, because of the type they are. They're not a specialty type of fuse. They're a slow burn 3.5, I think.
Yeah, something like that.
Like amp.
And yeah, she said they're not that necessarily that easy to come by, so she keeps them in stock. So I think it would be a good idea for us to buy a couple extra.
Yeah.
Extra just.
They're not expensive. I think on her website they're like $3.50 for one fuse, and that's not a lot.
And yeah, that'd be good. And the other maintenance, should we do that?
Well, what were you going to talk about?
The next maintenance item,
What was the next maintenance item?
the brushes.
Oh yeah, talk about those.
Okay, I guess after a period of time, after your machine's been used for quite a while, there's a possibility that your brushes can get worn.
On
For
your motor brushes.
Your motor brushes, right? So, which is a little bit mechanical, I think.
Yeah.
When you really think about it. She showed us how to remove the brush and put it back in.
And what I found surprising is I've heard about brushes for motors before. I thought they were brushes. They're not brushes.
They're actually a little magnet.
Yeah, they're just a little lump of metal is what they look like. And there's two, one on either side of the motor. And she showed us how to take them out. They're not hard to take out. And it's in the same areas where you're replacing that fuse for your switches or for your power onto your motor. And they just kind of pop out. And I guess you can get replacement ones if they get worn. You look at them. They wear down. But she said, check it every 6 months. But she's had, like, the machine we were working on with her that day, she's had that machine for 2 years. And this machine gets used a lot more than what ours will get used, because she does this as a business. So she's got either people renting time on those machines, or she's doing a customized quilt on the machine. So it's like it's being used daily and things like that. She says in 2 years she hasn't had any need to replace the brushes.
Yeah, like
but she showed us.
I wouldn't doubt that we'd never have to replace brushes, because I doubt our machine's not going to get the use that her machine's getting. So
no.
But I guess it's a maintenance item that is a good to know, and they are very easily replaceable. So so it was good exercise to go through to do that. Yeah, actually, as far as I know, machine electric motor brushes are actually two little magnets, and that's what causes the motors to spin.
Yeah, well, but why don't they call them?
That's what they call
magnets?
them.
Why do they call them brushes? Maybe they used to be brushes.
I don't know.
Anyways, so I'm going to insert in here a little video showing you this part.
There is a possibility that you're going to blow a fuse. The machines are designed to blow a fuse in that instance, because a machine that's off is going to do much less damage to the hook assembly than a machine that's still clanging around and trying to do what it's doing, right? So not always will you blow a fuse, but there is a possibility that will blow. So in Canada, we have a motor fuse. The American machines don't, but for CSA standards, we've got an extra fuse. So you've got 3 fuses in this machine. We're only going to be concerned about 2 at the moment. The first one is right here. There's a little drawer right under there. And the easiest way to get the drawer out is either the tip of a flathead screwdriver, or if you've got a pair of scissors somewhere. And I just pull that out. And there's your fuse box. All right. It's a 3.15 slow blow fuse. I have them here and I buy them right from the company. They're hard to find out in the like regular stores because they're so small. So this fuse here, you can see when you look inside which fuse is the one that's being used, and then this is your spare. So if something happens and all of a sudden you have no power, the machine won't turn on, you've checked your connections and your cables and your wall plug, everything's fine, but your machine won't turn on, it's going to be the power fuse, okay? There's an extra one here in the drawer. You can use that one. and you just take this one out, put the new one in, and carry on. It doesn't have a right way or a wrong way to go in. You just pop it back in the little box. Okay. Now, if something happens and all of a sudden your machine won't work, but you have power, so the lights come on, the machine will turn on, but none of your buttons work and you can't get it to run, it's going to be the motor fuse that's underneath these covers. Okay. Our top cover comes off. There's your motor. And then our motor fuse sits right in front of the motor here. So we do have to take both covers off. APQS machines are engineered so that we as quilters can do all kinds of work ourselves. It's not every time something small goes wrong, does someone have to come and fix it off. I need you to make sure that you're pushing in your blue button. Okay? Your stitch regulator button is actually attached to the circuit board inside.
okay,
So as
so
you lift this up, you're just going to push that in and pull the cover right off. It will be attached, so go ahead and just lay it over and let it hang. It's fine. Isn't that cool under there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this is your motor fuse right here. That's the fuse for the motor. So again, you've got power, your lights come on, but your buttons won't work and your machine won't run. It's going to be this fuse. So it's not a screw, it's just a little pop top. So you just turn it, and there's your fuse. So that'll be black. You pull that out, put a new one in. They're not, they don't have a right side or a wrong side. Just pop it in, and you're gonna put it back in. Just turn that like that. You look at the motor brushes. These are something I want you to check once every 6 months to a year. You may go for a very, very long time and never have to replace your motor brushes. I don't have a rhyme or reason to why some wear faster than others, but you want to just check them, okay? They're on a screw. They have a little screw cap, so we're just going to take that out. Make sure your machine is unplugged and off. All right, so there's your motor brush.
Okay.
This clearly is just fine. It's got lots of length. It's not far off the size it was when I got Lenny, and I've had him for 2 years. So when you'll notice there's an armature in here that spins, it's like a cylinder that spins. So you need to make sure when you take it out, see the concave there?
Mm-hmm.
You want to make sure that you put the motor brush back in the same direction that it came out. Right? So you want that running the same way that that cylinder spins. So we're going to put it in there. And there's one on the other side as well, so you'll be checking 2. Okay? Or the motor fuses, and that's where the motor brushes are, so you're going to check those. This you never have to check. If it blows, you'll know it, because your motor won't work.
Right.
Okay? But that's all there is to it. And like I said, it takes longer to take all the covers off than it does to actually change the fuse.
So the next thing she went through with us on is actually using the machine and tension. And everybody goes, crazy when you talk about tension on domestic machines or on long arms, because tension seems to be something that scares everybody. I know it scares me. Now, on my sewing machine, it has automatic tension on it. I have never had to adjust the tension. However, you might, depending on your long arm, if you are changing out your threads a lot to different ones, you're not using the same thread all the time for your top and your bottom, you might have to adjust your tension. And so she showed us how to do that. Now, this is beyond the scope of this episode to talk about tension problems.
And actually, we're not really still that familiar
with them. No.
With it, but actually it doesn't throw, basically it works out if your machine isn't stitching right, it could possibly be a tension problem.
And
so you have to adjust it.
Really, the only thing you need to adjust is there's a little knob on the side of the machine. It's actually part of the threading system. And you just either tighten it or loosen it a little bit, and check it out on a scrap sandwich piece to see if you're getting the right tension. You'll know if your tension is wrong if you look underneath your quilt or on the top of the quilt, and you can see say your bottom thread, your bobbin thread, you can see it coming up to the top. Well, you've got to adjust your tension. Same if it's coming down through the bottom, because the two ideally should be balanced. She used the analogy of a tug of war. So, you know, you think of the middle of the tug of war where there's the flag or the piece of cloth that they tie on that, and everybody's trying to pull it back and forth. Well, if you think of that, the two pieces of thread doing that, they want to have equal tension so that thing stays in the middle. And the middle is the middle of your quilt, in the layers, in the batting, kind of a thing.
Yeah, so you don't really want to see bobbin thread coming up the top, and you don't really want to see the top thread coming
through the
back.
bottom.
So,
but you can also sometimes see things like called eyelashing. And eyelashing is, especially on a curve, you'll notice this if the tension is wrong. You'll get little loops of thread that go around the curve, and that they look like eyelashes. That's why they call it that. And you know your tension is wrong there. She said 9 times out of 10, you can adjust your tension simply from the little screw that's on the tension discs right on the side of the machine, which are very easy to get to because they're part of the threading system.
There's 2 types of tension that you can adjust. You can adjust your bobbin tension, and you can adjust the upper tension. One's the lower tension, the other one's the upper tension. However, it's rare that you need to change the tension on your bobbin. It's more usually the upper tension that gets changed. So,
or you can at least compensate for the problem with the top tension with it.
Now, the other thing that she said that could cause irregular tension problems is if your sandwich or your batting isn't even.
Yes, and she said cheap batting is not even. And she said the way you can check your batting is hold it up to the light. And if you see parts of it you can sort of see through, and other parts you can't, then you do not have good quality batting, because it means that it hasn't been manufactured the same way all across the batting. And so that's going to play havoc with, or can play havoc with, your tension, because you have thinner areas and thicker areas of batting. So your needle's moving along across these, and it's going to change the tension. So basically the bottom line is don't cheap out on your batting. Also, if you use different types of batting, like there's wool batting, there's 2080 batting. That batting, that's what I use most of the time. It's 80% cotton, 20% polyester, or is it the other way around? One or the other. Then there's pure polyester batting. Then there's pure 100% cotton batting. And all of these different types of battings can cause tension issues. Can. It may not always, but it can. So that's important that you use very good quality batting. Believe me, I bought cheap batting once at the F store. We're not going to say its name, Fabricland, and it was on sale. And I threw it out. It was the worst stuff I'd ever worked with in my life, and that was before I got a long arm. So I can only imagine what hell it would have put my long arm through if I had used it on that. So yeah, it pays to buy, you know, brand name, good quality batting for that kind of thing. Anything else about tension? Well, tension can also be affected by the type of thread you're using.
And the needle size.
And the needle size. So there's a lot of things that can affect your tension.
So there's that, and like we talked about the batting, and or for some reason the tension has moved out of tension on its own.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you can also have tension problems because you haven't threaded it correctly.
Yeah.
Or you had a thread break, and I know I did this myself. You had a thread break, but the thread looks like, except with the needle itself, it looks like it's all threaded. You just look at it quick. Oh yeah, it's all thread. Okay, I just need to put the thread back in the needle. I don't need to rethread the whole machine. Well, there's something called a shepherd's hook that goes down, that your thread in the thread path goes under. And it's very easy when you have a thread break, the thread will back up on itself, whiplash, and it can come off of that, and you might not notice that. Or it can come out of the take-up lever, and you might not notice that. So you got to check it for that, because all of that will affect tension in your machine as well. That's why those things are there. So be careful.
Yeah, so I mean, even if you're having a tension problem, one of the things that might be worthwhile just doing is rethreading a machine.
Yeah. Yeah, right from scratch. Another little trick she told, well, I'm going to talk about that later. I don't want to talk about that in this section. But these are all things that can affect tension. Now, should you be afraid of this? I don't think so. I think you will learn. If you're somebody, see, I tend to use and probably will use the same thread for all my quilting projects.
Or within only a
Yeah.
couple of different thread groups
Yeah.
that we would use. Yeah.
So, you know, I probably shouldn't have any tension problems with it, but at least she showed us how to adjust those. And she can explain it so much better than we are right now. So I'm going to stick that little piece of the video I took in here.
Now I'm trying to create a tension problem because we just saw that we didn't have one, right? So we're going to create one. So I've cranked this one up. I'm hoping it still looks pretty good. But if I swing around that bend, all right, see it pulling?
No.
Yep.
So a couple of things. First of all, I know this is too tight because I just jacked it super tight. But I also know that I'm going way too fast in that little tiny area with tension that's already too tight. So while it looked okay going here, and I wasn't poking along, I was doing a half decent speed, right? But if I get in here and I'm starting to do really tiny things, my needle is flexing, right? So these little pokies and eyelashes are partly due to the tension being too tight, even though you can't really see a tension issue over here, but it's also the needle flex of me flying around that little tiny circle really quickly. So let's see if I go a little bit slower, if it helps. It might not because I've got it really tight, but it might. See the difference? And all I did was slow down. I didn't actually change my tension. The tension is still too tight, and I still don't like it. It needs to be better. So I'm going to back that off. And if I go super fast,
Oops.
see, it does change. See how it comes in here? I don't know if you can see. I can just see the yellow in between because I've got that bright yellow bobbin in there. I can see little yellow pokies. It's not too bad. I'm not getting eyelashes, which I had expected to get because of the speed I was going. But I've just got those little yellow pokies. So I'm just going to turn it back. I'll give it one full turn.
Okay, so then the next thing was she was letting us play, and she started with ruler foot quilting. There's a little platform that fits over the, what do you call that? The arm or the table of the,
Yeah, well, it's
not
where the
table.
little
It's where the
part
needle plate
where your
is.
needle plate is. You
Yeah.
know, the base or
The
whatever.
base. I don't know what it's called, but whatever, you know. Where the needle goes down, it's the flat part that comes out. Anyways, there's a little base that you need. You have to have the base that fits over there, and it gives you a surface for putting your ruler on to do the ruler foot
Yeah,
quilting.
because unlike a regular sewing machine, your regular sewing machine has a bed on it that's maybe this wide, right? And the bed on the long arm,
I guess that's what it's called.
it's more like a free arm, right? So it's a very skinny bed, right? So if you want to use a ruler with it, there's no place for the ruler to rest on. So what the bed bed for the ruler foot bed is actually creating a wider bed for you on
the quilt.
on the sewing machine.
Yeah.
Right on the
Well, if
and,
you
and it gives you an area for the ruler to rest.
Yeah, and if you didn't have that underneath your ruler, you'd be pressing down on the quilt and stretching your quilt, and it would bounce, and you don't want it to bounce because your ruler could go underneath.
Yeah, your ruler can start falling off the edge of the machine, so you need this support.
So you put that on, and away you go. And the beauty of doing ruler foot quilting on a long arm as opposed to on your domestic machine, because I've done ruler foot quilting on my domestic machine, with it, you're using the ruler, and the rulers will have a grippy back to them, and there's many ways they can have this grippy back. But you're putting pressure on the ruler and holding down your quilt as you push it through your machine on a domestic machine. On a long arm, you don't need to do that. You're moving the whole needle assembly, and you're holding the ruler, and then you're just moving the long arm down along it. So you don't need as much pressure on the ruler to hold it down, and yeah, you're not gripping it. But if you didn't have that little platform under there, you'd be pushing down on it, and you don't need to do that. So she showed us that with the ruler foot quilting. She showed us some different rulers that she has available. I picked up a few. Circles are good. Oops, wrong side. Circle. Now I've still got the backing paper on this one. That comes off, and you get rid of that so you can see through it. And then you'll need to either put those sticky dot things or sandpaper like dots that you can buy for your rulers and things for domestic machines, or I'm using Grippy, which is a spray, which works really well. And you can get these in several sizes. I got these 2 sizes. And I picked up this because this will do clamshells, and you can do a lot of things with this. And then, of course, you have your basic straight ruler. Our long arm came with one. Plus, I have a set. I have Angela Walters rulers, long arm rulers as well. And there is a difference in ruler sizes too, which I'm sure if you've done any ruler work, you know about that. You need a special foot. The long arm comes with that foot. That's the foot that's on it. But you want to make sure you see the thickness of this? There are ruler feet that are meant for low shank machines that are a little bit, they're not as high, the foot, and well, you need to have the right ruler, the right size ruler. So make sure.
Yeah, you need, in our case, we need thick rulers.
Yeah, you need thick rulers for this. Otherwise, if it's too thin, you get it jammed underneath your foot, and then you have problems.
Yeah, because the foot on the long arm also hops. It's what they call a hopping foot.
Yeah, it hops too. So you need this to be the right size thickness for it. Yeah, one little thing that I found interesting, it wasn't to do with ruler foot quilting, but something that people do with rulers, especially straight rulers. If you want to do, say, parallel lines, equally spaced, across or even vertically, well, she showed us a quickie, and I just tried it this afternoon, and it does work. You have channel locks on your long arm, which basically lock the head, the machine, so that it'll go left to right, but it won't go forward and back. And the reason you have those is, especially when you're basting down your quilt before you start, it allows you to line it up, make it straight, and get, without having to worry about moving it all over the place. But a trick she showed us is, if you want to do all these lines, you don't need a ruler foot for that. You just put the channel lock on lightly, enough that it keeps it from rolling on its own forward. So it's got a little bit of tension. And you go across, and then you just pull it towards you a little bit as the needle's running, and you go around this way. And there's just enough tension that you're not forcing it, but you're having a little resistance, so you can bring it forward to where you want to bring it, but it won't slip as you're going across. So that it's, because usually these things are very free moving. It doesn't take much to get them to go in circles and all over. You can just take your finger. Yes, you can just take your finger. So I thought that was kind of a neat trick, and it does work because I tried it this afternoon. So, if you want to do, what do they call that type of quilting? There's a name for it. Toothpick toothpick or something like that. It's called fine lines. But anyways, so don't have a video of us doing ruler foot quilting on there because we were doing ruler foot quilting and I didn't think to take a video. In the future, we'll show that. So then she talked to us about needle sizes and types of thread. Now, we did a whole thing for your domestic machines way back a couple of months ago on thread sizes, thread weights, needle sizes, and all of that. And it's extremely confusing. And we're not going to get into that again because I don't think we did a really good job at that time discussing it. All we did was confuse everybody else and confused ourselves.
But she showed us a variety of different kinds of threads and sizes and suggested needle sizes based on the size of the thread that we were using.
Essentially, there are 3 needle sizes for this brand of long arm. One that's called a 3.5, one that's called a 4.0, and a 4.5. The standard is 4.0. She said that's the one that'll work primarily with most threads within the 50, 60 weight kind of thing. If you go for a thicker thread, a heavier thread, so say a 30, a 12, something like that, you'll probably want to use a 4.5. If you go for a much finer thread, say your 80, your 100, whatever, you'll want to go with a 3.5. But they have been engineered so that there's a little bit of leeway on either side of those because there's no standard for weights of threads among manufacturers. So for example, a 50 weight thread by Aurifil might not be exactly the same as a 50 weight from a Gutermann. Okay, I'm just using those as examples. I'm not sure about that, but they can vary. In other words, it's she used the analogy of like you go into one store to buy a pair of jeans and you get a certain size, and then you go to another store and buy the same size, and those ones might be too big or too small, because there's not really a strict standard for that kind of thing. So it's the same with needles. So I guess what her philosophy was, you play on a piece of a scrap sandwich. You know, you try it out. If your thread is shredding, you probably need a bigger needle. If your thread is coming out or your tension is bad, you might need a smaller needle size with it. You have to play with it to match it up. But the one thing she said that I found really interesting was, you hear this a lot with domestic people, domestic machine people. And I can't use that brand of thread in my machine because my machine hates that thread. She said the long arm can use any thread. It doesn't hate a thread. It's all in having the right needle with it and the right tension. So you have to experiment if you're going to swap it out for different types of thread. Now she did show us one thread though she hates using in it, didn't recommend it, and it was a monofilament thread. And that's because monofilament thread tends to be like nylon fishing line.
And it curls back on itself.
Now there are brands now that are much better than the original ones from that are, you know, made in a way like Wonderfil. Okay.
They have a product called Invisifil.
Or Invisifil, yeah. With that works okay in that, but she stays away from the monofilament ones that are like that.
Now, having said that, she said there is one long arm quilter, which I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, she said
that seems to use it all the time and likes it
and loves it, uses it for everything. So, but anyways, that's what she told us, and like I said, that was like she was telling us, Eldo, we're eating our lunch, and you just start to glass over at that point because that is something I think is more on a need to know basis. Yeah. You know, like you've got to be using it.
Or you got to be a situation where you've just suddenly decided you want to change your type of thread.
Yeah.
You're having some problems or something like that. But it's the sort of thing that it's good to know. She showed us different threads, but we may not specifically use those threads. But, you know, sometime down the road, we might change our thread and suddenly get a shredding problem. Yeah. And then think to ourselves, oh, machine's not working or something. Oh, we should be saying to ourselves, no, we need to maybe change the needle and look at something else.
Yeah. She did give us a lot of other tips and info that we learned that day. One of the things which is back on cleaning, and didn't think about this, is she said you should clean the wheels that the what is that
The
called?
carriage.
The carriage. That's it. That's
The
carriage.
thing that holds the sewing machine.
Sheet on
It
it.
goes back and forth.
Yeah, it goes back and forth. She said you need to clean those out. She said, once a week or so, but it depends on how much you're using the machine, because there is stuff that will come off the wheels and off the track, and they get into the grooves, and it's very minuscule, but it will, if you feel your machine dragging a little bit, that could be the problem.
I said dirt, thread, stuff like that can get into them. Or actually, the machine wheels probably give off a little bit themselves because they're either type. I'm not sure if they're type of plastic or if they're type of
I don't know.
rubberized
Rubber
plastic or something. And I guess they'll eventually
Deteriorate.
Gives some change in the consistency or whatever.
Yeah. Well, there's friction.
Yeah.
So with it,
I mean, it's probably a minuscule amount of thing. It doesn't sound like the wheels are gonna just drop off and disintegrate, but they're getting dirty in some ways. It may be picking up thread or just dust from the air.
Yeah. Well, you can have a lot of dust when you're quilting. It comes from the batting and everything, and from your thread, depending on your thread how linty it is too. So that can get all in there, and that can cause you to, like, it won't run as smooth. Also, the rails that this all sits on, you should clean those off periodically too. So I did, and you just use rubbing alcohol and a shop towel, and you just put the rubbing alcohol on the shop towel, and kind of fold it and stick it into the grooves of the wheel and run it back and forth a few times on the track, then clean the track, and then clean the rails the same way. So I did this. Remember, I have only done 2 quilts since we've got the long arm, and you wouldn't believe the amount of black dirt that came off of that. Now, part of that was probably residue from in the factory.
Yeah, well, not only that, it could be because the carriage is brand new and it's oiled and everything else.
Yeah.
And it may be, a lot of times when something's brand new, it sometimes gives off a little bit more.
There's also bearings underneath there on the track too that make it, at least on ours. We have the Glide. We have a more sophisticated.
So we have something called a bliss track.
And it runs very, very smoothly, and it's because there's bearings underneath there. And she said you can clean those out every now and then. You use the same thing, the rubbing alcohol, and she also suggested giving them a blast of compressed air as well, to get, because thread can get under these 2 spots as well, and they're very easy to clean. You can lift up the whole thing, do it, put it back down on the track. So I have a little video showing me cleaning this when I got home, and I show you how much dirt and everything I picked up just from 2 uses. Another maintenance tip that Tracy gave us while we were taking the course with her was cleaning these wheels. These are the wheels that the whole unit slides on, and basically there can be some buildup of crud within the groove of these wheels. So she showed us how to clean them by just putting a little rubbing alcohol on a soft cloth on a shop paper towel, and just hold it to the wheel, which I'm going to do in a minute, but I'm not going to show you that because I can't balance the camera at the same time. But you just hold the wet alcohol cloth against those rollers and push it back and forth, and that will clean the gunk off. She also suggested that you wipe down the edge of this that the wheels are sitting on, and also do the same thing with the rails that this whole mechanism sits on both sides. So just a general cleaning and maintenance tip, but to keep everything running smoothly. So I'm going to go off and do that right now. I just cleaned my rails, and believe it or not, this is how much dirt I got off them. Now that is incredible because I've only done 2 quilts on this machine since I've got it. And so, yeah, very good tip from Tracy to go over your rails. Now, some of this may have been from manufacturing as well, because we didn't know about this until we took the course with Tracy. So there could have been residue already on those rails, but just look at how much dirt it took off those wheels and off those rails with the rubbing alcohol. And it only takes seconds to do this. So yeah, a very good maintenance tip. Another tip that Tracy gave us was to take a little piece of scrap batting and put it in here between where the thread goes through from the take up from the spool. And she said that will keep the thread from backlashing onto the spool and getting tangled up, which, yeah, I think this is an excellent tip. So glad we took this course with Tracy. Okay, there are always other things you can buy for your long arm. So we did. There were a couple things. So I've already shown you the rulers that I bought, and I'm sure I'll be purchasing a few more of those down the road as well, as I get more into that. But one of the things was, and I said I didn't think we needed them. Well, Walter said he didn't think we needed them, but they have come out with a new set of handles for the machine. They're a little bit more elaborate. They give you more versatility in the way that they fold and bend, which is kind of handy when you're doing ruler work quilting and stuff like that. But they're a pricey little item. They're
it's funny how it came out right after we bought the machine. So.
Yeah, really. They're like a $479 Canadian accessory.
And there isn't really a whole lot to them.
No, there's not. But accessories for your long arm are going to cost you. It's a closed market. Okay, they see you coming. But anyways, Walter, being the enabler that he is, he decided when we were using them on Tracy's machine and that maybe we should get a pair of those. So we did. So they're on the machine now. And yes, they are I haven't used them much yet since we took the course. But I was using them this afternoon for a bit, and yeah, I was moving them out of the way when I was doing some ruler foot quilting, which was kind of nice because the other ones you couldn't do that with it. So we have those. Walter's justification for buying them was that, well, she only had 6 pairs in stock and 4 pairs of them have already gone. There's only 2 left, and we may want those down the road. She may not have any of them in stock, and then we'd have to wait. Okay, we bought them. Another thing that we got actually was a freebie. Are clamps. Your machine comes with these clamps that are on stretchy cords, Velcro, that you use to grab the edges of your quilt before you start to quilt it. It just adds extra tension to the quilt. But they only have a space of about 1 inch that they grab onto. I noticed on Tracy's machine, she had these clips that were about 6 inches wide. And in my mind, well, that's covering more space, so it's probably better. So I asked her about them. And she gave us a set of them for free. Well, when she got them, there was some problems with them, and the company gave her back her money and everything, but said just keep them and whatnot. And so she gave us a set of them for nothing to see how we like them and whatnot. So I put them on, and like I said, I haven't done a quilt yet with them on it, but yeah, we'll see how they work out. But I have part of that in a little video here to show you what I'm talking about.
She had some problems with these ones, and she was sort of thinking that it may have something to do with the fact that she was having trouble with her air conditioning and it got really hot in the shop.
Basically, the part that clamps on that's underneath is a rough piece. It feels like a piece of sandpaper.
Yeah.
The glue that was holding it to the clamps itself had loosened off.
Right.
And so
she had complained to the manufacturer, and they gave her a refund of all the clamps. But so I guess she feels uncomfortable maybe selling them to somebody in case
the same problem with it. So
and she said that didn't cost her anything. So,
but I figure if those things do come off with that, then I have a glue gun.
Well, not only that, we can give her some feedback as to whether they're working for us or not.
Yeah. So there's that. And the other thing that she gave us, Tracy's really, really good about it.
Generous.
Very generous. She has a course that usually when people buy the course, it's about $200. She threw that in, and it's an excellent course. It's showing you how to do ruler foot quilting using different rulers, but it's all broken down into small teaching units, and she actually gives you the instructions of printouts PDF files for how to create the blocks themselves, the dimensions of the blocks that you are going to use to do this ruler foot quilting on. And at the end of it, you can put it all together as a sampler quilt as well. And she has videos with it all. And her videos are extremely well done, extremely professional, and very, very clear. She does a picture in a picture kind of setup. So you can see sort of over top and see where her hands are positioned and the ruler is. And then she has a picture in a picture where you get up close and personal at the same time. So I've only looked at the first video on that, but it'll take some time to work my way through that course. But that's really generous of her to do that, to give that.
It looks very well put together.
Yeah,
so.
this is not Mickey Mouse, okay? But Tracy's not Mickey Mouse.
No.
Tracy is an excellent instructor.
She has a whole series of YouTube videos describing all different kinds of stitches you can do on the long arm.
And free motion.
Tips on how to use your long arm. And it's really worthwhile. She's a very good presenter.
Yeah. And you can go to, and I put the link in the show notes below, to her YouTube channel and to her website as well. So if you live in our area, which is basically east of Toronto, then, and if you're thinking of buying a long arm, or you need long arm supplies, or you want to take courses with Tracy or whatever, then look these two spots up, these two links, click on them, and you're going to get a wealth of information from her. So I do have a little video on here that I'm going to put in now showing you what we're talking about the clamps and the handles. While we were taking our course with Tracy at Whirls and Swirls, we also picked up some new accessories for our Lucey. One of those things we picked up, actually 4 of the things we picked up, were these clamps. Now, these clamps are attached. It's difficult to hold the camera in one hand and show you the other, but these are attached by Velcro. And with the Lucey, it came with these clips, which create tension in your sandwich, in your quilt sandwich. You put them on the edges of it, and there's 2 of these on each side, and they're adjustable because they're all on a Velcro strip right here, and this helps keep your quilt, the tension in it, so that you can have nice smooth stitching across it. Now, what I liked about these when I saw them and asked Tracy about them was that they're much wider than the ones that came with the Lucey. The Lucey ones only had about a 1-inch square of clamping area, whereas this, you can see we've got about a good 6 inches, which I think is better. The best part about these were they cost us nothing, because Tracy had some problems with the way these had been manufactured when she ordered them, and well, it's a long story, but I'm not going to get into it. But anyways, she very kindly gave us 4 of these, 2 for each end of Lucey, to use. So this is great. The other thing that we did purchase from Tracy, and this was something that Walter thought we should have, he's an enabler, but I'm glad we went ahead and purchased these, are new handles. These handles are very adjustable. They allow you to adjust them this way, and at the back you loosen this off, and you can raise or lower these as you see fit for your purposes. Now, why are these better than the handles that originally came with the long arm? Well, basically, I'm just going to tighten this up. When you're doing free motion quilting or ruler work, you may want to move one of these handles out of your way, and you can do that because they're 2 separate ones, and they just give you a little bit more adjustability. They're not particularly cheap for this accessory, but you know, really, down the road, we'd probably want these, and we might not be able to get them when we want them. So we thought we'd take advantage of the fact that Tracy had these in stock right now, and we got them. So those are 2 of the upgrades that we have done to our long arm. Okay. Amateur boy over here is telling me one thing to do, and I do it, which is stupid. I shouldn't be even listening to him. Anyways, to bring us to the conclusion, I hope that the little video parts that I put in here explain things for you a little better than the way we were doing it. Like I said, it was a lot of information. We are very fortunate that in this area that we live in, we have two excellent dealers. Ultimate Sewing with Shirley, who handles all our domestic sewing needs, all of our quilting needs, and now Tracy, who looks after all of our long arm needs as well. I mean, an unbeatable combination. And just as an aside, Tracy used to work for Shirley and used to work in Shirley's store at Ultimate Sewing. Yeah. What were you going to say?
No, that's fine.
Oh, fine.
You said Ultimate Sewing, and then
Yeah.
you didn't say it was Shirley. So, okay, go ahead.
Anyways, before I kill him on camera, because he's got much to say, and I'm getting a little punchy now because this video's gone long today. Anyways, yeah, so we will talk more about Lucey as we get more used to her and things that we're doing with her. But anyways, we thought we'd share this information with you because you may find it useful. We hope you do. So, what are we going to talk about next? No idea. We never know until we do it. So, we'll talk to you next week, anyways, about something. So, see you later. Say goodbye, Walter.
Goodbye.